I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. It is a brilliant, beautiful, breezy, so much alliteration, day here in New York City. Andrew Kuo, how did you enjoy the gorgeous weekend?
Oh man, I enjoyed it. Like I enjoy every day, Ben, with enthusiasm from behind a window, sitting in my living room with 5 screens, shooting NBA Finals stuff into my brain.
You are really excited about this year's finals, and we're going to get to that in a little while. As a Boston day one, I understand.
Well, let's get into it now because, you know, in Boston tradition, poop is on my mind this morning.
That does tie into Boston playoff lore for sure.
Right. The most amazing playoff lore of all the lores.
It's
He
odd
was
they don't
on TV.
mention
He
that
was like,
one.
yeah. He was on ESPN being like, I had to go to the bathroom. And then like a year later, he's like, no, I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, we've all been there, Paul. It's a human thing. It's fine.
Yeah, that was great when Paul Pierce acknowledged that he did, in fact, defecate in his own shorts. And then kind of retracted it. Yeah. No, I didn't say that at all.
Classic turtle head. Yeah.
I meant something different. No.
It went back in.
That wasn't a shart. That's not what I said.
Yeah, the turtle poked his head out, saw it was game 1 of the NBA Finals, and put its head back in, like most turtles do.
It'd be kind of great if in all these Celtics montages they showed him on the stretcher or wheelchair or however they extracted him, from that shitty situation.
Well,
yes, more of that later.
It's on my mind because I don't know when the last time you've had a handyman or TaskRabbit come over, an electrician, plumber, very, very helpful people. I hired someone to put together kind of a complicated IKEA shelving unit for me this morning. Awesome dude. Coordinating with him, he's like, I got you. Shows up on time. He's like very nice, shakes my hand, puts on those little booties not to get my floors dirty. Immediately is like, can I use your bathroom? I'm like, absolutely, sire. Shit away. And that he did.
Well, look, this is the risk you take. When you hire a TaskRabbit for a Monday morning, you got to assume you're his first job.
Yes.
No one's getting a TaskRabbit at 7 a.m. or it seems unlikely.
I wish.
I'm saying, but it's almost certainly his first job. He's just loaded up on a coffee. He's getting ready for the day. It's circulating through his system. His IKEA shelf building nerves are tingling. He arrives there and he's like,
His
there's just
butthole's
one
tingling.
thing. There's just one thing I've got to do, sir.
Prepare. I gotta get my mind right. I gotta get my body right. And I am no kink shamer. You can poop wherever you want. People gotta poop. I don't mind that part of our bodily function. But it was incredible because it is like a trope. And yeah, he did tell me. I was like, hey man, do you need any coffee or tea or water?
I've had a lot of coffee.
That's what he
said. A lot
said.
of coffee and a huge breakfast.
Yeah, he's like, I had my coffee. I was like, can I make you some breakfast? Like, I got food. He was just like, I had a big breakfast. I'm like, yes, you did, sir. This was after he took a shit in my bathroom. I didn't smell it, but I kind of did.
Well,
the seat was down. Yeah, it was in there for
Okay,
like 15 minutes.
hold on.
15 minutes.
Okay, all right. There's a lot of parts of information here. If you didn't smell it,
I kind of smelled it. It wasn't bad. It
like
smelled
a
like
light-
a fart,
yeah, a light scented shit from a handyman is, I think, getting off easy.
Oh, I am grateful for him. Get out
Now-
of here. Yes.
Now, 15 minutes, that's a bit prolonged, if you will.
I'm hoping it was a number 2 and not number 3. Or 4
mean-
or 5.
If it was Hell Square 6, your bathroom would not be intact.
Yeah, this is true. But if it was a number 3, it would be intact.
But that would take 15 minutes, yeah.
It depends. But I assumed it was a number 2. There was a little light smell and whatever. It was just like I'm like, here. This is what I pay my good hard-earned money for, man.
The
But
15 minutes may have been him shitting for like 2.5 and then just waiting for like the after effects to subside for 12.5 minutes.
if he was a dog like Paul Pierce, he would have unloaded in his pants and just like changed his shorts really quickly in the bathroom. He would have done it while he was waiting for me, like outside my door.
Here's a question that maybe you haven't considered. Did he charge you for those 15 minutes?
Oh, it's not hourly. I do, since it's IKEA, it's by the job. So it's not the normal TaskRabbit scenario.
I see. That would have been a real snafu.
Are you taking a shit on my dime?
Look, if you're going to shit on my dime, shit fast. Get in there, shit fast. I'm not a monster. You can shit on my dime, but it has to be like, come on, let's go. Clockwork. Get it in. Get those bowels moving. Pump them out. Come on. Rock back and forth.
If you pay someone by the hour, it is you're buying into their number 2, number 3, number 4 time, right? You're buying their retainer fee, not necessarily a job fee.
Well, yes, because by state laws, people get bathroom breaks, but not on like a 1-hour job.
Oh yeah, or if it goes like 1 hour 10, it's like I gotta charge you for the second hour, bud. I'm like, yeah, you do, but
But 15 minutes of that was you shitting.
yeah,
So
but that's
like
part
that's
of the
what
deal.
got you over. But that got you over the hour mark.
Yes, exactly. I mean, have you ever hired like a cleaning person, like a
Yes. Yeah.
per hour? I've only done that once. I didn't love the experience, but the one time I did, they were like, so did you set up with the person like rooms as like a flat fee, or did you do it by the hour? We're like, oh, we did it by the hour. They're like, in that case, I'll be taking my time. They were just like, oh, okay, so we're probably only going to get to like a couple of these things that you have on this list. I'm like, that's fine. I mean, there's like a shot clock, right? There's a strategy. There's a gamesmanship to this.
Yeah. I've never hired anyone in that capacity that wasn't just like a flat rate. So I didn't really care how long she was there. You know, like if it would take her.
Right.
Well, this was I've only had a woman. It wasn't a gendered thing. I'm talking about in my experience. It was only
He's my
one person.
butler. Remember that Seinfeld episode?
I do. Yeah, she could just be there, and I was like, yeah, you can hang out, take your time, go have
Yeah.
lunch. I'd take calls. I don't care. Like,
For sure.
it's going to cost X amount of money every time. That was back in like the Airbnb era where people would come in every now and then, so I would hire a maid before I left.
That was a golden age, right? We thought anything was possible. Like, I don't have to do shit. I just have to have an iPhone.
Yeah, we had it good. that may have been the last good moment right there.
Right.
Before things really fell apart.
When Uber drivers had like snacks and waters, like, we're getting paid. This is sick. I'm like, we're in a new age. And that was a
Lyft
new
had
age.
mustaches on the front
Yeah.
for some reason.
Pink furry mustaches. Yeah, and I used TaskRabbit because it was an option for IKEA. And I was like, do I even trust this service anymore? Because, like, I had not been on since they first started. And I was, like, scrolling through, like, this seems like a great service. Eventually, I'm going to use this. And this was, like, half a decade ago at this point. When
I used it to get some things installed around here, and it always feels a bit like an admission of my lack of handyman craftsmanship.
This is where I was going.
As a dude.
Is it a little emasculating?
Yeah, for sure. But there's certain stuff I just don't have that many tools to do, or there's stuff I don't want to fuck up. But yeah, you still have to be in here, kind of like broing down with you. Hey, dude, how are you? Good morning. Welcome over. Yeah, you're gonna put this mirror up for me. I gotta do it myself. I got a big meeting. Big meeting with the men's group.
Kicking the tires of your Billy shelf. Yeah.
Gotta head down real quick to meet up with the fellas. Yeah, we're gonna kill a deer with our bare hands.
I mean, in New York terms, even in New York terms, I'm not good at this stuff, and I am not a tough person, shockingly. So I want someone who's good at it to do it, but I can imagine if someone comes over and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can I see the instructions? Like, wait a second, I can do that. But it's also like, I'd rather be making perfect pods or looking up WNBA b-ball reference pages. I don't know. I'm just like not good at making handyman task work.
Well, you mean more to society as a podcaster.
Yeah, this is true.
And as a tweeter than you are as someone who would build shelves in their own closet. Like, we can't have you squandered on that.
I
sort
need
of
to
thing.
go buy those peaches. But this kind of relates to maybe it was a tweet or maybe an Instagram meme I saw being like, trade school is a trap. Like, do not believe that when people tell you need to learn skills, because these skills have a clock on them and the future is more limited than it might seem. And I'm like, however dark it is, like, it's kind of true, right? Like, and there's always going to be a need for people who are great at everything, but like, I remember I was trying to learn Flash, and I was like, I cannot learn this. But all my friends who did learn it were just like, we went to school for this. And then when Flash no longer is a thing, they're just like, well, what do I do now?
Well, I went to college studying to be, an iceman. A guy who would cut large chunks of ice from the lake in the winter, store it with some hay, and then bring it on a carriage to people's houses in the summer. Turns out there's not the same demand for this back when I was a youth in the late 1800s.
There's like a need for every man to claim that they're good at like building stuff, right? Because it occurred to me, I mentioned Flash, and what I mean by Flash is like the beginning of the internet when stuff moved, and that was like a skill that was very much in demand that was no longer in demand a few years later. But like, that is also a little like not tough. Like, there is a need for every guy to be like, I know my way around this shelf, or this car repair, or this kind of hands-on thing, right?
I mean, for sure. I mean, when my car had a light went on in the front, I had to change the bulb, but it requires pulling out like an entire sort of apparatus to do that change. Mm-hmm. So I went on YouTube and figured out how to do it. And then I went out and made a big show of doing it in the street. I'm out there, little radio going, got grease all over my hands, the hood is up, got these things out, and people were walking by. I'm kind of like lightly cursing. God damn, they don't make these like they used to. I probably took about 7 minutes, but I elongated it to a solid half an hour of me just like horsing around with my car fixing things. Great experience. I would recommend getting a TaskRabbit for that.
I mean, this is like the basketball discussion or debate, right? Because I think like fixing a car is a bona fide skill. But sometimes I get the feeling it's like, well, you just don't want to, you don't want to get dirty. And I'm like, no, I want to get dirty. I just don't know how to do that. It's like when people are like, I have a couple friends who claim they can't cook. It's like, I just can't. I don't know. My wife does it in the kitchen. I just order in, whatever. Like, I don't cook. And I'm like, cooking is one thing where you just have to follow instructions and it kind of just ends up good, even if you mess it up. If you just care about cooking, you end up with something edible, right? That doesn't really happen with fixing an engine of a car or building shelves. Like, if I just follow these instructions, I could build this thing. And I'm like, no, I can't, because at every step, something changes.
I'm with you on the IKEA part. I think there are certain IKEA things that you should hire someone to do because they take a long time and they involve heavy, big elements. And if you haven't done it before, they're just a major pain in the ass. And sometimes it's like you even need clamps and tools that are like not quite part of the IKEA set. I'm talking about like big cabinets and stuff, like a kitchen. Sure.
That's what I'm having done.
You know, a kitchen.
Like kitchen units, like not cabinets, because that's a whole thing, but just like a freestanding kitchen unit, like that seems very complicated. It came in a million boxes.
I'm with you. Like that is technically an IKEA project, which puts it in the category of like, can you like clip these two things together and then hang it somewhere?
Yeah.
But that's not. It's not.
I can make a record
yes.
shelf, no problem. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, I like these like massive cabinets that weigh like 180 pounds, and no, that's not the same. You need a skilled person, or it's going to be a miserable, prolonged experience. And I'm just not down for that if it comes to making a thing. Also, that's not really being a handyman either.
This is, well, I didn't hire a handyman. This was like a IKEA verified TaskRabbit, but yeah, totally. Point taken.
That's what I mean. Like no disrespect to that king who pooped in your bathroom, because he can probably do.
Yeah.
He can probably do those other things.
Oh, definitely.
I just mean like, that's a guy who's building IKEA. Like they are skilled, but that's not the same as someone who's like, hey, I'm gonna build an outhouse for myself before I come into your apartment.
And there's a whole world of IKEA hacking and IKEA like nerddom that I bought a unit that was basically a shell of a cabinet and then had all these modular parts. So I was on this website for like an hour being like, can I put this shelf in here and then double this up and then put a different facade? You know, like it was one of those modular doodads. And he was just like, can you just show me a picture? I have no idea what your brain was thinking when you ordered this. And I'm like, neither do I, you know, like, and I just kind of started talking to him. I was like, are you like very, very busy doing this stuff? He's like you wouldn't believe. You're 1 out of 4 today and my week is booked. I'm like, that's amazing. He's like, I enjoy it quite a bit. You know, he's just like, my brain is IKEA. I know these things back and forth, but I can't read your mind. I'm like, this is kind of incredible. He's like, I love my job.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because this is what he likes doing. He works on his own time. I mean, he does have a boss in a sense, and that's TaskRabbit, which takes a cut of his profit, probably a hefty amount. And his reviews on that are what keep him in business, and being on the platform is necessary. So, but other than that, it's probably a better version of being an Uber driver because it's like more quote unquote skilled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And Uber drivers, that
and more in demand. That there's less people who can
right
build IKEA cabinets in New York City than there are who can drive a car.
What's your vibe on IKEA in general?
Don't like it, but it's fine for certain things.
Man,
I hate going into an apartment, and my own is one, where you see those little brackets on the inside of cabinets, and you're like, IKEA.
I know, but it's like, I told myself after like I graduated college, like no more IKEA. Like I'm an adult now. I can live like an adult and not a freshman in college or a sophomore filling out their living room. And I've never gotten quite there. I can't escape it because not only is it affordable, but it's kind of good. And there's certain pieces you can recognize right away, like the Billy shelf, like everyone has those, or the record gridded out shelves that everyone has, which are the best actually. And then there's some stuff that are like nicer. I imagine all these expensive build outs for kitchens and stuff, like most of them are IKEA like structurally, and then they put custom stuff on the doors. Amazing company, but like still has a stigma attached to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as it should. I'm with you. Their kitchens and those things have gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
Like they look good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's great quality. At the end of the day, like that little thing pops off the inside of the cabinet, and it's still annoying.
Yeah, and like it's not good to be living around so much plywood or particle board, but maybe it's fine. I don't know. It's scary when you go shopping for furniture and it's like complies with California laws, about formaldehyde and about glues, and I'm like, God damn, this is confusing.
So I'm on TaskRabbit. I'm trying to.
It's Paul
you can
Pierce
get people
there.
to do.
He's like, I will shit
people
in
to
your
do
house.
errands.
Yeah.
You can get people to do errands.
Yeah.
You can get people to wait in line for you.
Oh, do we want to talk about this legislation about restaurant?
I'm looking up.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at podcasting, and I don't see anything here. I don't think that falls under TV mounting or event staffing.
Add some search important words to it, like influential, perfect, right? Perfect in the search bar.
Okay. Sex work. All right. Executive assistant comes up if you ask for sex work or event staffing. So I don't know. Maybe there's some possibility there.
Yeah. Casting.
Where do you go for your crisis actors?
I love Craigslist. You can get some really great stuff on Craigslist. I'm an eBay guy, so maybe you can't really sell services on eBay. So Craigslist.
It feels like every election cycle or every now and then we get these screenshots from ostensible Craigslist postings asking for actors on one or the other side. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, it's me, George Soros. I'm willing to pay $10,000 to anyone willing to wear a pink pussy hat and protest King Trump. And then it gets used as evidence that the other side is not actually a moral army or the most moral army in the world, or one that believes even in what they're saying. I mean, Nancy Pelosi said that Palestinian protesters were probably backed by the Russians. That's something that Russia's interested in doing. They're at war with Ukraine, but they have a budget for anti-genocide protesters, people in favor of a ceasefire backed by Putin. But this is a tradition claiming that the fans of another political platform are in fact not genuine. They're astroturfed.
Hey, I got a email from a one L Rose from the MSG network begging me to go down to Wells Fargo Arena and sit in the good seats. I don't know.
Well, you were roasting the Sixers for them giving out tickets for that.
That was weird.
Crucial.
That was so
Game
weird.
6
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, and that was kind of the same thing.
So
it was a little bit astroturfed, although those people are happy to go.
Yeah.
They weren't, but in a way they were paid off.
I mean, remember when we had the legend Dr. D on this here perfect pod, and we asked him about Knicks stuff, and as Mulder, conspiracy theorist number one, said, he was like, I can't talk about that. And we're like, why not? Aren't you a fan of the Knicks game? You're always courtside. You're on the Jumbotron. He's like, well, I like being courtside, and I like being on the Jumbotron. Like, say less, Dr. D. Say less.
Yeah, you don't want to leave early like certain influencers. You get banned because you didn't show proper reverence for your courtside seats, which, to be fair, considering the value of them, you shouldn't bail early. You should stick it out to the bitter end if you're going to take those tickets.
I flip-flopped on this recently in my old age. I used to go to sporting events, see blowouts, and watch people leave early, and I'd be like, but the experience is great still. Why don't you just like walk around the arena or just like sit out this 10 minutes? Like, this room is incredible. The lights, the action, whatever. Now that I'm washed and old, I'm like, oh, I want to get home. Like, if I can beat people like shuffling down staircases and waiting for the A train, I'm going to do that. Like, go home, leave early. American Airlines Arena, get in your car, get in your stretch limo and get out of here. Because, yeah, I mean, you've watched the game. I don't feel like shaming people anymore for leaving early.
I only mean if you are accepting the front seats from Dolan. You kind of have to stick it out. I'm not saying a normal person who wants to leave during the end of a bloodbath is a bad fan. I think you just run the risk of becoming the laughingstock fan, which is that you bail early, your team makes a furious comeback, and then you're watching the game across the street at a bar or something like that, like a fool.
Pounding on the doors with their ticket stubs. Do these organizations like MSG or Wells Fargo track certain people? Let's say you're a famous person that's courtside. Do they track your social media to make sure you're being like a Ben Stiller about it? Being like, I love this team. You know who I love? This team. If you're like, Brunson's had better games, they're like, we got to take those tickets away from him.
Well, I know for a fact that certain teams are very sensitive about you rooting for the other one.
Oh, of course.
I know, and I mean, actually, both New York teams. I've seen evidence with my own eyes.
You can't just go courtside and be like, I love the game of basketball.
Yeah, a buddy of ours went to a game wearing Wizards gear.
That's strong.
And
That's very strong.
was seated courtside with a notable and a regular
Someone who would get
who was
photographed.
a Knicks fan.
Right.
Yeah. So photos came out of our friend sitting courtside wearing a Wizards tee. And apparently their friend, the one who was more notable, heard about it. Like that was not deemed a acceptable way of using, the +1 that came along with that celebrity row pairing.
One time before I did it for a job and for a company, I got tickets to see a concert at Radio City, and I had tweeted like, this ain't going too well, and the publicist saw it and texted me being like, can you delete that tweet? And I'm like, fair enough. She was like, hey, these were hard to get, like, I'd appreciate it if you just kept that between us. Fair enough, right? Like, I was like, I'll be good. You put me in my place, definitely. But I mean, obviously we're alluding to today's news that there may be actors at Trump rallies that are getting paid $75 to go and maybe a $50 bonus. I forget how the bonus kicks in, but a lot of his rallies, which are rumored to be sparsely attended or properly filled up, that a lot of these people could hardly support him but have to be paid to go.
So who was paying them? Because
Dude,
Trump is not in the business of paying anybody anything.
Right.
Like
That's
his
why
entire career, you would say the main theme is that he doesn't like paying
anybody
for things.
That's why he's doing them in weird places now, because he owns all the arenas and all like the fancy hotels money from 4 years ago. So he has outstanding balances there. So he's like, I'm just doing this in front of the Four Seasons landscaping because I don't need a TaskRabbit. I can build a shelf myself.
I mean, he doesn't pay workers. He didn't want to pay hush money. He
doesn't pay his lawyers.
Your girl Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
Doesn't pay his lawyers. Doesn't pay contractors and people who work with him on his hotels.
No, he doesn't pay people.
Doesn't pay taxes. Like, the idea that he's out there kicking every redneck schmo who wants to roll in and watch him yell about sharks on stage for an hour and a half, paying them $75 does not fit in the method of behavior
Right.
that we now understand how Donald Trump operates.
Right. Yeah. Yet we can forgive him, not us, but his supporters can forgive him for anything, right? Like, what hasn't this guy done? Are we sure he's never killed somebody? He's claimed he could kill somebody on Broadway and still win president, and be like, did you kill someone, bro? Like, why did you mention that? I don't know. It's just exhausting. I don't want to. I mean, I'm into it. He is exhausting. I'm into the discussion, but like, I don't know.
It's just a bummer that he is not kind of a American king or like the jester for the country. If he was running for like a ceremonial office, he'd be great.
Right.
He's so American. His love of fast food, his low information about all topics, but his expertise on just as many. He's a podcaster, naturally.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's funny as fuck.
He is.
That monologue he had,
Yes.
just that I was alluding to about sharks and MIT and this great question that he presented, which was whether it would be smarter to be killed by the electrical charge of a battery on a sinking ship or fed to the sharks. And he just goes on for 2 minutes about it. I'm like, this guy is president grandfather. He is fantastic at being this person. Nuclear codes, he's just not old enough.
You gotta be Biden age for that.
He needs some more seasoning.
I was staring out the window being like, whatever happened to surrealism? Like, that never came back. It's not like we're wearing UFO rave pants. You know, it's like those are just, or maybe we are. But I'm like, Magritte, why hasn't that vibe made a comeback? And I'm like, oh, it's Donald Trump. He's the surrealist. Like, it has bled and evolved into politics, not pictures. So I'm like, yeah, his speeches are not only amazing, they just don't really seem rooted in reality, but they seem rooted in a reality, just not our reality.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong at all. Even looking at QAnon or whatever kind of conspiratorial mumbo jumbo, whatever kinds of rabbit holes that people want to go down, and all types of topics and others, and all sides of the political spectrum, there is this discovery of an alternate reality, and it is all surreal.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
people
when people
use that
say we're
word a lot.
post-truth,
Yeah.
people say post-truth.
Yeah.
What about we just say we're in the age of surrealism?
Yeah.
It's a little more positive spin.
I mean, there was debate I saw where a lot of newscasters or talking heads claim like Trump supporters are not living in reality. And someone was like, but they are living in reality. This is the reality. We can't just assume that they're on Mars because they're on Earth. Is Kyrie Irving living in reality? Like, a certain reality. Who knows? Like what he was trying to accomplish with his flat Earth stuff. But like, I don't know. Is the question like, am I on Earth? Because Earth is a lot weirder than I imagined. Maybe I'm on a version of Mars, and I should, get into my Elon Musk rocket and get back on Earth. See you on Mars.
Well, also, considering how propagandized all of us are, and Americans particularly, for sure, how are we even to say that our reality is the real reality?
I don't know, man. Like, it this I want to talk about like Caitlin Clark and all this stuff so bad, but it's not basketball time. But the way we talk about some of this stuff just feels simulated, right? I'm just like, oh, when is someone going to accuse her of being reverse racist or just racist? Oh, here we go. Sort of like your girl Kathy Hochul. Oh, I have an adjacent question to ask you. Hochul. When me and you say words and names incorrectly, should we correct each other? Is that a good teammate move or a bad teammate move?
I say names constantly wrong.
Same.
I can't. I think we just kind of let it ride.
You got to let it ride, right? But like, if it's a name that's mentioned more than twice in a segment, and it's said, like, Jason Tatum is a top 20 player, right? Like, is it your job as a teammate to correct me, or do you just let it ride?
I think if it's a well-known person, where it's going to be just weird to have a repetition of that error, then I think a correction is in order. If it's a one-off, who cares?
Yeah, but is it the gyro-euro dilemma? Is it the euro paradox?
Well, if it's a person's name, then it's different.
Yeah.
If it's just a word that's mispronounced, I don't think that.
Yeah, but you know,
that doesn't
the
necessarily
euro thing
matter.
is like, well, I'm saying Hochul, knowing that it's Hochul, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes, especially politicians that do congestion pricing shenanigans.
So is it Hochul?
I think it's Hochul. Why do you say Hochul?
I always get it wrong. I think I say Hochul.
I think it's Hochul.
Which is definitely not right.
I think it's Hochul.
Let's go with Hochul.
All right. Katharine Hochul. So she reversed.
Yeah. Hochul seems right.
I've heard it as Hochul.
Feels better than Hochul. Hochul seems right.
Hochul. Hochul. Kathy Hochul.
I think it's Hochul.
It's Hochul. I think I don't know. I need my Jason Tatum to help me out on this.
Is it Hochul?
Hochul.
The first syllable is definitely emphasized. Hochul.
Hochul. I think it's Hochul.
Boom. Hochul it is.
All right.
Settled.
All right. So my question has no answer. It's like an IKEA shelf. Every step has its own turn, twist and turn. But
So it sounds like I'm recording from the middle of an intersection.
What's going on there? Is it congested? Do we need congestion pricing for your living room?
All right.
Well, what's happening?
Okay, that should. Had the window open, getting some of these early breezes, and all of a sudden, I'm in gridlock.
Okay.
So your girl Hochul,
Yeah.
she at the last moment decided congestion pricing, which had been debated and discussed and celebrated
Moralized.
and disparaged for 2 years or however long it's been in the process of coming to fruition. She pulled the plug on it. She ripped the gas tank right out. She crawled underneath the vehicle of congestion pricing and unscrewed the catalytic converter and
She didn't get someone
ran
to
off
do
to
it.
a-
She did it herself.
She did it herself. She didn't hire a crisis actor.
Right.
She did it herself. She went and got those precious gems from the gem man who does that to catalytic converters. You're a car hater, so I want to hear what you have to say first.
I think the worst thing about New York City is the traffic. And like, I don't want to be sitting out in a beautiful restaurant, eating my garbage plate, enjoying a beautiful day like today, and see a RAV4 parked right in front of me. Like, it's a sea of Hondas. It's a sea of Volkswagens. Like, and they're all gray, white, or black. I think less cars would make. I'm a bus boy, as you know. I enjoy and fear the bus in equal amounts. I like the subways, which I also fear and enjoy in equal amounts. But these work well, and I thought there was going to be some congestion pricing that would go into the MTA. It's not really how it works. It's not that transitive, but no pun intended. But I don't know if congestion pricing helps or Hertz, right? Because there was arguments I saw from people that said only the wealthy can drive these cars in, and they're just not going to blink at a price increase. It's like, oh no, only the poor people are being punished here because they're the ones who use cars, and wealthy people like don't have to deal with this kind of problem of traffic. I don't know who suffers here. I just want less cars.
So this is, in some ways, the issue with talking about congestion pricing. Because the arguments that are made are typically, as you said, those in favor are that like, well, it's going to be less pollution, it'll be less noise, then
it's a more livable city.
Money for the
Yeah.
we're going to make money for the MTA. These, you know, this is who it's going to affect and these things. But the reality is that like you, or I'm saying you, because I think you fit in this category, are, well, it's more you as well. It includes you, are generally just car abolitionists.
No, you need cars, but there's a lot of cars.
But I'm saying, all right, let me put it like this. Like in the same way as if you were an anti-abortion activist or say a temperance advocate, you don't want there to be alcohol. So even incremental movements towards the illegality of alcohol are a positive thing. You want big jumps, you'll take small jumps, you'll take anything as long as it goes in that direction.
No, it's not abolishing cars, but taxing cars for congestion peak hours, which, you know, peak exists in many different worlds, especially if you go Metro North on a train. Peak hours cost you more money. This has been a practice that's been generationally applied to different ways of transportation, and cars don't seem like they should be immune to this automatically.
I mean, I think one point here is that I'm not opposed to congestion rules. If you wanted to say no one except for cabs, or I don't know if cabs, let's say no one except for service vehicles and you know, commercial vehicles are allowed to go in and out of lower Manhattan
If you have
between these hours.
two people in the car, no tax. If you're one person, you get taxed.
I'm just saying, I think like if you want to make rules that were along those lines, that makes more sense to me.
Sure.
If you wanted to say this part of the city no one can drive in, no one with this letter on the back of their thing during a certain day, you're not allowed in, whatever. I'm like, I'm okay as long as it's across the board. My issue with the monetary side is just that like rich people want this. This is why Mayor Bloomberg wanted it. He's like, I live in Manhattan. I want there to be less cars. I don't care about paying it when I leave in the city and come back. I put my car in a garage. What I can't control as a billionaire is how long it takes for me to get 15, 20 blocks in a car. That's the only thing I can't control. And I'm stuck there with the same crisis actor who's blowing up Quo's bathroom in his truck. And we're just sitting here in traffic next to each other, even though I'm a master of the universe, media billionaire, presidential candidate, mayor, and I'm stuck in traffic next to this guy.
But Bloomberg,
and that's not cool.
Bloomberg being a billionaire doesn't have much to do with the idea that there's too much traffic and we have to fix that, right? Like, there's just a lot of traffic, and I don't think things have to stay the same always. You could be like, we're going to add bike lanes, we're going to add city bikes, and we're going to try to curb traffic. But, like, it gets into constitutionality because they were trying to curb ride-sharing cars, like limit the amount of cars Uber could have that would populate a certain jurisdiction in Manhattan. I'm like, that doesn't seem constitutional to me. Like, you're allowed to run a business unless you had like a law about, you know, in LA, famous Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, right? Like, I want to be in the carpool lane, so I'm going to get a hooker. I'm going to hire a crisis actor to be in the carpool lane with me, just so I can avoid this ticket. Like, I don't know if that necessarily works, but it's an effort into the direction of not more cars, but less cars.
I guess my thing is that I feel like traffic is kind of, I don't know, it's like sort of self-policing. And this is an effort in a way.
Wait, how is traffic
to
self-policing? I'm curious. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you look at the traffic and you say, oh, it's going to take me an hour and a half to drive in, maybe I'll take public transportation instead.
Right. But
If it's going to be fast.
the traffic
then
is
I'll
already
drive in.
there.
Yeah, I just mean, I don't think there's any time in my life other than COVID where New York hasn't had bad traffic.
Oh, this has been going back to the 80s and 70s, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think this idea of like a New York without traffic is like, well, no one's experienced that. And I get this idea, like, it would be nice to have less traffic, but
We can try.
What
You
are-
can put Caitlin
but I-
Clark on a USA team. You can put rookies on USA teams, right?
I think to a lot of people who don't like cars, and I think you're right, cars are ugly and they sit around for most of the time. They don't do anything, and they're not visually beautiful. And I'm all in favor of more pedestrian streets.
Yeah, whatever.
Less cars. I'm just more like, well, if you're going to fill up a street with like shacks for sitting in and garbage containers, and I'm like, that's still not that appealing. Maybe there's
Well, that's
more public good, but we're still not using this in a great way. But I only mean that, like, I think the people who would benefit from this are clearly people who live in Manhattan, who make a lot of money, who keep their car in a garage, who don't mind paying $15 or $20, whatever, when they leave and come back. And they're like, this is great. Because it's only Lower Manhattan. It's just one place. It's like, oh, this is where a shit ton of like wealthy people are. This is where people like go out at night. And if you don't care about the price tag, then you're going to love it because you can zip around town. Or even if you're taking cabs, it's going to be faster. And that to me seems more of the upside. Like sitting on the street and there not being that much traffic, that's never been part of like how New York works. Sitting on the street in New York has never even been kind of part of the deal.
one of our favorite places to have N beer. Shuts down the street in the summer, and I really like it. Right, like we could just walk up and down. There's, bars and restaurants put out their tables, and just for a few hours of the day, happy hour. I think at 10 o'clock they open the street up again. It's really nice. Like people are just like chilling on the street, bullshitting, like eating dinner. I quite enjoy that. When the few times I've been to Europe, really enjoy that part of Italy or France or London or whatever. London less so, but like we're not Bloomberg people, right? Like we just kind of enjoy having in beer spread out on the street outside, and then we pack it up and go in. It's not like a political thing. It's like a human quality of life thing, right?
Yeah, I'm saying I'm all in favor of closing down streets. I'm not in favor of making the ability to drive around economic. That's all I'm saying. If you say, hey, we'll keep it as it is, but just funnel all the cars off into these couple places that are going to be really annoying so people just won't want to drive in, or ban them from this area from even driving in, so you might as well take a train if you're going to be anywhere beneath 14th Street. It just doesn't even make sense. You might as well walk the bridge. I'm here for all those proposals. I just don't like the idea of like, oh, you can flippantly spend this money, and someone
how
who
much
else
money is it?
I mean, it was gonna be like $15-20 every time you drive in.
That's not nothing. That's huge. That's like after a week, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then you tack on parking for the most part, because most people who are driving in aren't street parking. The thing I just kind of resent about it a bit is that, like, I live in Brooklyn. I live a couple BQE stops from, like, the bridge. I can't drive into Lower Manhattan without paying. You can drive around Brooklyn. You can do whatever you want.
And you're kind of in
Like,
the
I'm not-
transit desert. You have buses,
I'm like,
but
yeah. But, I'm it's like, wait, we're not part of New York City? This is just a Manhattan thing? Come on.
I mean,
What are we doing here?
It's so interesting because there's some neighborhoods that weren't served by buses or trains, and those neighborhoods sometimes end up being like very desirable because they're near water, or the zoning makes it able for companies to make high rises, whatever. And then the city has a problem, right? Because there's so much taxation that they're looking at that they would love to sweep into their general direction, but there's not, the services aren't quite there. The infrastructures aren't quite there. And we saw with Hudson Yards, they built a subway station for Hudson Yards, which is like no small task. And I doubt that happens again in our lifetime.
Have you ridden like was it the First Avenue subway line?
Up into no, not the new stuff.
Me neither. Is it nice?
I've seen pictures. It looks really nice.
Where does it run? It's so strange to have a subway stop that we've never ever taken.
It's weird, right? Like, but not only that, even watching the G trains and L trains kind of evolve because there were so many people who wanted to live in the areas that those places serve. Like the G train used to be the worst train in all of New York. Now it's kind of like the same. It's dependable enough, right?
Yeah, G train's fine now. It's Second Avenue subway. That's the one.
It only went up a few because they were drilling and realized they were compromising the foundations of some of these buildings.
Oh, it's 72nd Street to 96th Street. Well, no wonder I haven't been riding that.
Yeah, they couldn't do the whole thing because buildings were like cracking.
And then eventually would go all the way down to like Hanover Square. Yeah, that's not gonna.
That was
really
Bloomberg's
happen,
whole
probably.
thing, right? He wanted to like push that forward. He was a legacy dude through and through. He wanted to get Jet Stadium on the west side, and then it turned to Hudson Yards. I don't know what the fuck Hudson Yards is doing now.
We've talked a lot about poop, congestion.
Being stuck.
Have you watched the? Well, this is actually. Let me take that back. This is about the grimy New York. Did you watch any of that show, Eric? It has a really bad title. Really bad title. Do you know it? Do you know
I
what
do,
program I'm referring to? Did you try watching anything? Because this like grimy version of New York of lore, the 1980s, is depicted in this show.
It was too wacky for me. It was a little too indie rock for me, but I know what you're talking about. I didn't make it far. There's a lot of acting going on. I'm sure it's great. It just wasn't my cup of tea, but educate me on it.
Well, this is the one about a puppeteer.
Ooh, yeah, I can't. But yeah.
And that part wasn't even the wacky element. He, what's the actor's name?
Cumberbatch, right?
Cumberbatch. Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Cumberbatch. Yeah. Cumberbatch.
He's kind of good in it because he's a good actor, but then he is playing a very predictable role for him as like an alcoholic, manic loon.
Did you watch Doctor Strange? Do you watch those movies?
No, I haven't seen that.
He's good as Doctor Strange. Those are also very wacky. You're right. He's a magnet for wackiness.
So instead of talking really about this show necessarily, it was more about their depiction of New York, which I found really grating. I think the show is terrible for what it's worth.
Okay.
Like it's bad.
I will not be checking it out.
It starts out with like, again, a very 10 minutes in, you're like, all right, this might be good. But their depiction of New York City is like what Instagram comments are on like a subway fight video. It's every single person is unimaginably rude. Like just violent and rude. The city is trashy. Everyone, it's like the Fox News New York Post version of New York, and it's like this is the 80s. It's gritty, and it feels very Googled. If that makes sense. I believe the writer is British, and I'm not saying that British people can't accurately depict New York, but it just feels Googled. And there's one thing I wanted to bring up just because as a basketball podcast, it stuck out to me. There's a scene where they don't really tell you what year this is. It's clearly 85, 86, 87, or 88. And
New York Mets era.
there's a scene.
Gotcha.
There's a scene where three kids are wearing replica jerseys, sitting in a living room watching TV. That's just an aside, like they look over there and there's these kids and they're all wearing replica jerseys. And one has a Ewing.
I love it. Oh, whatever is
One,
shit. I love it.
One has a Trent Tucker.
Bomb Squad.
The other one has a Chris McNeely jersey.
What? That's great. That's great. These are some,
is so weird because I kind of don't believe they ever existed.
What do you mean?
Like a kid's Chris McNeely jersey? Were they making the kids authentic McNeely jerseys
Someone
back in
found them.
'87?
Someone found it.
No,
You
they
don't
clearly
make it, do you?
they must have made them.
That's like
they were child
unnecessarily
sizes.
difficult. Unless the stylist had an ulterior motive or motivation to make it, because you don't budget a show like Eric and be like, we need a kid's McNeely jersey.
The McNeely thing is the weirdest, man. It must have been. It felt like someone said, "All right, Ewing, Tucker, I don't know."
How much
McNeely?
How much would you TaskRabbit charge someone if someone came to you and be like, "I need a kid's McNeely"? How much would you charge that person?
By the hour, or while I'm shitting.
Hopefully, shitting.
So here's
only shitting.
Here's the tell of the tape.
$400.
Chris McNeely, he played a total of 108 games for the Knicks between 1986 and 1988. He averaged 4.3 for his career.
It has to exist.
4.6 boards, 1 assist. I don't know. It feels as if they just went to a print shop and were like, give me 3.
I mean,
There's also weird things in this.
Go ahead. I mean, you.
Well, I was saying.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I want your theory on why they found a McNeely.
I mean, it might have some sort of emotional attachment to somebody who is putting this together. Maybe the stylist, maybe the director. But you can get like custom jerseys, I'm sure, for a couple $100. I would charge someone if someone asked me to do this, or the interns to do this, the interns would probably ask for around $400 because the cost would probably end up being upwards of $200, and then you'd have to make it look old, and it would take time. You'd have to deliver it. You'd want to walk away with like $150, right? It's not nowadays with kind of fast fashion stuff and websites that can customize stuff. It's not that hard. But what if it's not the right year and it has to be authentic, and the pinstripes aren't from '86? Like nerds will know.
Yeah, it doesn't get in the weeds like that. You just see them from a distance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm guessing they just went to Fanatics and spent $150, whatever it would cost, making 3 kid sizes jerseys. That would be my theory. But yeah, that show is odd because it just depicts New York as being so, relentlessly gross and awful in a way that doesn't even, after a while, it doesn't feel real. You're like, that's not what this city is like. And they don't give many specifics. These details just aren't there. It's a weird watch. But I thought you might have seen some of it. But what about the hit of the day? The movie everyone's talking about on Netflix. Hitman.
Whoa.
Are you up on that?
Was there a basketball player named the Hitman? I know there's a wrestler. Who posed with that Tommy gun in those old 80s and 80s posters? You know what I'm talking about? Was that Clyde Frazier? Because
I know
Bonnie and
the
Clyde,
exact
right?
posters
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway,
Could have been him. Was the boxer Tommy Hitman Hearns? Is that right?
there was Tommy the Hitman Hearns. There was Brett the Hitman Hart.
Yep.
That's all I got. It was. I'm trying to think of a NBA player that could take that. It was Clyde Frazier, right? But I watched some of it. It was. It felt like Barry to me. That show Barry on HBO. It's kind of quirky. It kind of humanized a really strange act of killing other people. I couldn't really get through it. I don't know what my attention span is. What's happening to me these days? I usually can get through all this stuff, but like lately, I've been starting and stopping shows. But again, educate me on this and tell me I should watch it.
I thought it was pretty good. I was going to go with the like, Girl, Are You a Quirky movie that humanizes the act of murder? Because I want a Linklater.
Was it Richard Linklater?
Yeah.
I love him. I didn't know that. I guess I love him. I didn't really get down with the Newton Boys, even though D'Onofrio was in it. But that's interesting because I found it to be a bit dated, and he's a great filmmaker.
I liked it. I thought it was sweet and low stakes. Good chemistry between the two main actors, neither of whom I really know much about, but I'm not that much of a contemporary film buff like you are.
Oh, you just like Cassavetes and Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
repeat for
I
you.
only really like. Yeah, I'm really more of a Criterion guy. You know, I like the classics.
Air Bud, He Got Game.
Eddie.
But yeah, what about it is notable? What about it will help me think about something or nothing? I don't know. How will I glean a great 2 hours out of this?
I don't think it was great. I thought it was likable. I thought it was lighthearted, and yeah, at no point do you ever think this isn't going to work out in a nice way. That isn't, you know, your happiness at the end of the movie is not in jeopardy. I did like one of the messages, and I don't think this is a spoiler because it doesn't affect how you would view the movie. I like this idea that instead of saying, you know, the real you is what's important, or you should be who you really are, the message that they kind of explicitly say is like, you should be whoever you want. Like, don't worry about being yourself. Go be who you want. Be a better version of yourself. Figure out who you want to be and then go become that, which I think is kind of weirdly subversive when you're talking about the sort of mawkish morality of films, which is like, no, the real you, that's the virtuous one. That's the good one. And this is like, no, not true.
Because the real you might want to be a hitman.
Well, it's like the real version of you might kind of be like a loser.
Oh, for sure.
And
I mean,
if you want to come up with like a cooler version of yourself that's got like, that doesn't have, you know, negative 500 aura or sub-zero Riz, you should, you know, go and try to do that rather than like say, I've accepted I have negative 500 aura and that's just who I am.
I mean, not to jump into basketball yet, but like, I think the Celtics fans realize they don't have a superstar and they're better than ever. They're going to win a chip.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
We're right there.
All right.
We're right here. The interns are frantically gesturing. We've crossed the 1 hour threshold, and now it's time to talk about basketball.
We didn't get to Hunter Biden or Ray J. Those were amazing topics.
Instead, we're stuck talking about the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So, the NBA Finals, everyone's saying it. Negative 500 aura. Why?
Oh my gosh. I think we touched on this last week, so hit the gong if I'm repeating anything from last week's Perfect Pod. But I think people... okay, I am just speaking from me. Personally, I think Celtics fans, the BMM, we've joked about them for years, they should take their victory lap. This is amazing. Like, they're going to do it. Like, the stars align, whatever, easy path, injuries, whatever. They won games. They added Jeff Van Gundy and Kristaps Porzingis from MSG lore. And it's going to happen. And the Mavs out in the West, like being a second tier seed, they were number 5, but it was bunched at 4, 5, and 6. Like, they're just not good enough, or they're just not a threat and they're not interesting. It doesn't mean we have to like talking about Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. I think, me personally, yeah, Jason Tatum's going to get his championship. It's like, well, is he top 3? I'm like, can't talk about this. I'm done with this. Is this the best team in history? It's like, it is not. It's just a really great team. It's just like, do we have two of the best tandem in history? I'm like, you do not. none of this is interesting, right? Because we've litigated it so much because Boston media dominates our world. And Dallas is like, this is an annoying franchise in an annoying city. I love Luka Doncic. I love Kyrie Irving. That team is gross. Like, it's like, oh, it's not going to be OKC. That's fine. Oh, it's not going to be Anthony Edwards. That's fine. Oh, it's not going to be Jokic. Whatever. Ugh. Luka can't walk into the arena without a limp. Like, this is going to be great.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, of course, as any moral citizen, we're rooting against Boston.
Sure. Yes.
You have to. There's no
Right.
two ways about it. You're like, oh, I'm fine with them winning versus Dallas. No, you have to say, I prefer.
You're either a good person or a
Boston.
bad person in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why when people looked at the pre-series betting, you're like, wow, people really think Dallas is going to win.
No. Yeah.
Like, no, they just dislike Boston. They're taking the points because they want to bet on it.
Yes.
They want to lay down some money, and they're taking, the underdog, which betting-wise was Dallas, because they don't want to bet on Boston. Because no one wants to root for them.
No one wants.
So it is
No
what
one
it is.
aspires to be a leprechaun. Sometimes you dream of being like a horse running through a field. Dallas, we get it. No one wants to be like a murderous leprechaun.
Yeah. No, look, and this kind of goes back to the ratings thing, which I don't care about.
No, it's noisy.
To be clear, I don't care about, like, are they growing their audience? It doesn't matter to me. I like the sport of basketball. I don't care.
Although it's an interesting
if other
discussion
people are
that we had
watching it.
last week, right? Like, I was thinking, like, if the NBA wanted to grow, because people love to glob on to winners, if the ratings go up, the interest will follow. The NBC will do a great job with this.
Yes, and again, I think that's great for the NBA if they keep expanding and getting bigger and more people are into it and people keep subscribing to Perfect Podcast and buying the Joy of Basketball.
And we get to
and
gatekeep
incredible
it harder.
merch pieces.
Look at you new fans.
Exactly. All huge upside. But yeah, in my opinion, the ratings to a particular series, we can analyze them, but I'm not like, damn, this shows something overall. But in this case, one point I made last week, and it's not one that needs belaboring, was just that this is the first series in decades where there hasn't been an MVP on either team.
Sure.
I don't know how long that goes back. I didn't even look because there hasn't been one on the winning team only one time in the last 20 years, and that was Kawhi, who was about as close to an MVP as you can get. And that was also a finals where injuries marred the outcome against the Warriors. Other than that, you have to go all the way back to 2004 for the Pistons, who won it without an MVP. But that's not even saying there wasn't an MVP included, because then you got to go through Hakeem and Jordan and so forth. So this is a kind of unique finals, and it lacks that kind of particular star power, that kind of narrative arc, that kind of proving ground for someone, because Tatum is still 25. I'm sorry, because Luka is still 25, and Tatum, we know he isn't on that same tier as these all-time greats. He's a good player.
Right.
He's good. He's good. So the story to me about the Celtics is like, and part of the reason why I'm more or less unbothered, other than my, as I said, core principle of rooting against Boston, is that I look at this team, I'm like, this is a victory of a front office. This isn't the same Boston team with Marcus Smart and all these other guys who we've grown familiar with. It's like, it's Brown and Tatum, some guys they got via draft picks from the Nets who have developed into excellent and useful players, but not superstars. They've acquired Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Al Horford,
Hauser.
and
Hauser was on the team, I think, last year.
Yeah, he was, I think, and Derek White. But four of their main six guys, all of whom are really good. A bunch of them are all stars in the past. Through trades, they have just Brad Stevens just snaked the league repeatedly. I mean, he got Horford back for nothing because he wanted to go there. Derek White was a late first.
Yeah. Even the Porzingis trade, everyone's like, If he's healthy, that's really annoying. But he probably might not be healthy, And Drew Holiday, everyone hated that. Yeah.
I mean, you look at those moves now as opposed to how they could have blown up, right? Because Porzingis is the only reason this team is this good, and
awesome.
he was out. If they had played a good team, I think they would have been booted from the playoffs.
They have
while
not
he
played
was
a
injured.
good team, and respect to them. That's why you get the number 1 seed, so you don't have to play
Yeah.
shit.
This doesn't mean that a healthy Celtics team isn't better than other teams when they're healthy. I just mean they were able to avoid playing anybody dangerous while they were an inferior version of this team, and now they're here. And Porzingis is back, even though it looked like he got dinged up a little bit. I think he's okay.
Yeah.
They're an extremely well-built team, and as a Sixers fan, I look at the way they aggressively went out and found complementary talent to their star players who aren't even as good as Joel Embiid. And I'm like, kind of wish Philly had done that.
Well,
Instead of saying, like, here's Tobias Harris for 6 years.
yeah. And I think they had to risk something, right? Like, these were not automatic moves. Drew Holiday was a great ad, not automatic because of his age and maybe situation. Porzingis had a risk to him, right, because of his injury history, but it all worked out for them. And it's kind of awesome. I'm kind of with you in, like, trust. There's nothing I like more than making fun of leprechauns and clam chowder and whatever floats your boat in the area of Boston. But this team is cool, right? Like, it was constructed in a cool way. I don't want to get into debating what Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum represent, because Tatum is just kind of like a goofy guy, like of the Drake mold, and Jaylen Brown is like shares the same opinions as Kyrie Irving. As people, like, negligible. I kind of don't mind them. The framing of them annoying, and that's a whole different thing. But this team is cool, and even Tatum's like, maybe I'm not the best player. And Jaylen Brown's like, maybe I'm not the best player. I'm like, this is kind of incredible, right?
Maybe Porzingis is the best player.
Healthy he is, right? Like, if Porzingis is feeling good and he's in his bag, he's probably the best player on 25 teams. So that's no shame. But it's watching Twitter trying to figure out how to talk about this team has been the interesting thing for me, because there's no superstar.
Yeah, it's funny because prior to the series, people were trying to talk about what this meant for the legacies of these players, and I was like, Boston's just not the main character in this. And I know that's really weird for the team who's likely going to win the finals to not be the main character, but the team is the main character. But there aren't really plot lines. There's like, what, Tatum finally got it. No, that doesn't work. Jaylen Brown shows he's elite. You're like, he's good. He's already been named All-NBA once or twice, even though he's like a good but not great player. They are just, as I said, a story of really excellent front office work. I mean, that team is incredibly well built. Everyone defends, everyone shoots, everyone moves the ball. And they have two guys who are good ISO scorers that kind of kick the whole thing into motion.
And a hilarious coach.
Yeah, I like Mazzulla a lot, yeah.
Those quotes are great. I don't know how you can be funnier than Jason Kidd, who asked the team or his player to knock a cup of water out of his hand to buy some seconds. But, like, Mazzulla is lovable. Like, I don't want to root against fans or analysts. Like, that's not fun. And I find myself having a tough time rooting against these players or this organization, especially when my man Jeff Van Gundy is, like, pulling strings in year one and he gets a chip. Like, it's hard for me to find any anger, and I've muted so many Celtics voices that, like, my finals experience has been kind of pure. I don't know. I want it to go 7. I want Dallas to find a way to win 2 at home, and by this time next week when we record another perfect pod, it might be a different story. But Celtics look like they can beat this number 5 seed out west.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, to me, it's mostly that I liked Drew Holiday as a Sixer. I liked Al Horford as a Sixer, even though I was in the distinct minority in that regard. I thought he was fine in Philly, and he got a bad rap because he was making a lot of money and was a smart player trying to fit in to a starting lineup that made no sense. I like Porzingis in New York. You know, Derek White, he was a guy that I thought that Philly should have traded for. I always thought he was a solid defender and a good player in San Antonio. But a lot of these guys have only been there a year or 2 years. You know, two of their main six, I mean, two of their starters are guys who haven't even been there a full calendar year. It's just hard to get the same ire when Marcus Smart's running around flopping and shit. And you're like, oh, this fucking guy. Oh, he's so dirty. Oh, I dislike him. These guys, I'm like, I don't have any issue with these dudes. They aren't dyed in the Shamrock Shake Celtics.
And I want to stick to the brand a little bit. Like, you know, kind of like, fuck all of these Celtics, too. You know, like, I hope...
Oh, fuck. I mean, fuck them all.
Yeah.
I want them to lose every game. I just mean, it's hard to get as worked up about these... Also, when I didn't think Philly had a chance in hell at winning this year, I'm less invested in the Celtics crumbling as well.
And also, like, when Jokic goes down and when the Thunder go down and when the Mavericks somehow beat the Wolves, I mean, soundly in Game 7, but it goes 7 games, I'm just like, oh, the Celtics are not perfect and they can get beat by many of these teams, but it's not the Mavericks. Like, Luka is probably going to miss 1 or 2 games. I remember joking about that IRL with you, like when that matchup was finalized. I'm like, he's going to be game to game, and he's actually hurt. This is going to be annoying. And Kyrie's going to be like, hey, you know, winning and losing, who cares? And I'm like, he's doing that now too. It's like, I'm a better man now. You know what I don't care about? Your feelings. I'm like, all right, the Mavs are who they are, and I'm not, obviously, it's amazing how they came out of the West, and it was a cool Timberwolves series at times, but it doesn't give us fans, like, much to chew on in the finals. I'm like, Boston's going to beat the Mavericks.
Yeah, a lot of people would ask me, like, you got Mavs in this? I'm like, well, I have to. I don't have a choice. That's who I've got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I have the Mavs. That's who I'm aligned with. Go Mavs.
Yeah.
Big Dallas guy. Big D. Game day 1. Like, what do you want me to do, man? This is who we're riding with.
Amen.
But, like,
Yeah.
you think they're going to win? Would you bet them? I'm like, it's a different story.
Hey, man, I picked the
Depends
gentleman's
on,
sweep. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we're going to have to talk about them more next week. So let's talk about better shit.
Yeah, let's talk about something that doesn't have a negative 500 aura.
Yeah. That doesn't...
Caitlin Clark discussions.
Wow. It's a culture now, because we did the Caitlin Clark breakdown last week, and now there's even more to talk about.
So now we're talking about, well, there's a few things. We didn't even get to the part where, like, Indiana members of Congress are trying to write resolutions about physical play against Caitlin Clark. We didn't even get to all that stuff. But now we have the latest topic du jour regarding Caitlin Clark, which is that she hasn't been named to the women's Olympic team. And this is, of course, again, scandalizing for the army of Caitlin Clark fans. Why is she able to generate such take artistry on nearly a daily net level?
I think because we are all inherently sexist, and we can all think that we're not talking about gender most of the times, but, like, it doesn't feel like we respect this player or any of these players. And I'm just like, it if it sounds like a tone of voice that is like, all right, let me tell you what the deal is. And I'm like, we don't really do that often, but in the WNBA, it's just like, this is exactly what's happening to this rookie. And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm not seeing that. It's like, yes, this is like a race discussion. This is about gender equality. This is about capitalism. And it's about national pride. And I'm like, I'm not sure I see all these things in this wonderful player who's just adjusting to like a bigger and faster game. But these discussions are not boring at all.
No, the discussions are good. And I mean, you also have sort of traditional femininity versus like a more masculine version of it. Mm-hmm. And that's part of this too, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's race, it's class,
it's physiognomy, right?
It's people who are new to a sport versus
gatekeepers,
people who are gatekeeping the sport.
Right.
I mean, just an unbelievable mix of vectors.
It's everything. It's like gentrification, right? And I always joke on this pod about it, but it's the language people use, being like, I don't like the way this town is changing, and I'm fine with the way things were in the beginning of the show, Eric. And that's real New York City. But this new building, it's like, get it out of here. We don't need affordable housing for hundreds of people. Like, I want things to stay the same.
The most interesting take, I guess it would be on the gentrification side, the pro-gentrification side, is that, like, don't you want your property values to go up? Like, we're building this shrine condo to Caitlin Clark. Don't you guys all want the benefits that Caitlin Clark is bringing into your neighborhood? She's kind of like the Barclays Center in this. Mm-hmm. She's going to bring jobs, wealth to your community. And yet, you're protesting? You're throwing rocks at her? How dare you?
Yeah. I mean, do you think it was just something that kind of unraveled things that we had on our minds anyway? A discussion of who's allowed to be here is a discussion like everyone loves to have. Like, who belongs here and who has a right to stay here is the question of every generation. Going back centuries, caveman, polyamorous wizards. But anyway, like, and Caitlin Clark is just like kind of, in my opinion, an innocent bystander here. And she has like kind of acted like that. She's just like, I am just trying to be a really good basketball player, and all this other stuff. Yes, I'm disappointed here. Yes, I'm happy here. Yes, I grant this person their opinion here. But like, well, what do you want me to say? You know? And this is where people who have a language to talk about certain topics can talk about those topics. And of course, race plays into everything. To your point, I like quite a bit. It's like, her being a guard is different than Breanna Stewart entering the league, who has 4 championships at UConn, ends up being the number 1 overall pick, and probably pretty quickly becomes an MVP and maybe the best WNBA player of all time. But she's a big, and it's just like, well, she's dominant because she was gifted with this skill, which is her physical part and her, the things we like to consider skill, which is like touch and spatial awareness and all this. But Caitlin Clark, like, I could beat her one-on-one, right? It's like this Steph Curry bait.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can unfurl whatever argument you want depending on which position you want to, stake a flag into the ground. Mm-hmm. Like, there's always a moral position, and that's why I think there's such feverish debate, no pun intended, because like everyone thinks they're morally correct, even the people who are completely wrong.
Right. I
mean, the oddest people are the ones who are just Caitlin Clark fans and like, oh, you're the Ben Stillers.
Right.
You're the people who just decided that,
or virtue signalers, right?
But like sitting front row is at Knicks games and being Mr. Knicks on Twitter is like a role that you want to be. Like you're Mr. Caitlin Clark.
Right. I don't see that many of those, but I've seen a few. Like people who are just like, can't we just enjoy this greatness, that kind of thing?
No, I'm saying those people aren't there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying the people whose only interest in women's
right.
basketball is just the defense of Caitlin Clark, which is, of course, as we were saying, cloaked in like whether it's about race or it's about sexuality. There's something else there where they're not fans of the WNBA. They're fans of Caitlin Clark, and that she represents something in some twisted heart of darkness way that like the WNBA is this like league of I don't know like athletes who no one cares about that are laboring in obscurity, and here comes this glowing white knight in Caitlin Clark to like lift them into civilization and like the modern world of wealth and TV, and yet they won't not like foul her when she drives the basket.
I gotta admit, I'm kind of mostly there with that, because I mean we were just talking about Brittany Griner not making enough money where she has to play in Russia and things unravel for her in unfortunate ways, right? Where she's detained in Russia, and that's a whole story upon itself. And then we got to talk about the economics of the WNBA. It's like, oh, these people, a lot of these gifted players aren't making $100,000 a year, so this is a part-time job for them being in the WNBA. But it is the dream because it has the most cultural cachet. And then Caitlin Clark is like moving games to bigger arenas and selling them out. And I'm like, there's something valuable here. Michael Jordan floated an entire league. Messi does that. There's Gretzky. There's Tiger Woods. There's athletes that can do this. So this is not the first time we've seen this. Like, act like we've been here a little bit. Barry Bonds did it for baseball. They still can't figure out Shohei Ohtani, though, which is kind of like a parallel of the WNBA plight. Like, there's no storytelling. But Caitlin Clark being left off of Team USA, I agree with people who are like, regardless of how good she is or regardless of pedigree, you have to put the most interesting player in your sport onto that team. I'm like, yeah, why not? Just do it. Like, it doesn't have to be like, well, she hasn't earned her place. I looked at the stats. Like, Diana Taurasi is the GOAT, one of them. Caitlin Clark's like, turnovers are bad, but she's got her in most categories. Kelsey Plum is a champion. There's 4 Aces players on this USA team. Caitlin Clark's got Chelsea Plum. Kelsey Plum has not blocked a shot since 2022. You know, like, if we're talking stats,
Like I mean, you've blocked a shot since then.
right. I mean, we're talking like, who are you going to take off this team? I'm like, just pick one. You know, like, Caitlin Clark is as good. If you're telling me a rookie's not allowed to be on this team, then that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the purist version and saying, well, look, this is a team and you got to earn it. And thus far, we don't think she's earned it. She's only played 12 games in the WNBA. She just hasn't
She's represented
earned this
the
opportunity.
USA already. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's just going to have to wait 4 years and come back. But there is also the fact that she is a huge fucking star.
Yeah.
And she is good, and she's a great shooter. And the thing is, it's like, you could always make the argument that, and, you know, men's basketball does this constantly. That's like, no, we need another shooter.
Yeah, she's the shooter. Yeah. Or a passer.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But you look at some of these teams, like JaVale McGee has been on like Olympic teams.
Yeah.
Like, we need another big. We need another shooter. We need Kyle Korver out there. Like, you don't actually have to say these are. It's not an all-star team necessarily.
Right.
It's you're trying to build a basketball team with components that you find useful, and like, she is a elite shooter, and even though she hasn't hit that well at the WNBA level, we all know that she is. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that argument is even better, at least, than saying, well, she's also really famous.
Yeah, it's the dog paradox, right? Because if you think the team should be composed of the best cultural representation of American women's basketball, okay, then like no rookies, maybe, I don't know. it's going to be an easy gold for them regardless. But if you're saying we want to put the best team together, then I'm like, then she should be on the team. Then Kelsey Plum has to be off the team, you know. But we're not talking about the best team. We're talking about all these concurrent narratives to justify who gets there. And I don't know. Do we want to be the best, or do we want to represent an idea of the best is the question.
I mean, I think there would also be a lot of ill will towards the WNBA if they did put her on the team from people who are longtime fans and from people who are like, you know, within the league itself. And I feel like if you're the WNBA, that's the real dilemma there. Are you trying to grow the prominence and visibility of the league by doing things that may be a little dicey and may alienate your core audience, or, you know, your players, your coaches, or people on other teams? Tough question. If you put her on there, in some ways you're not even doing her any favors.
No.
Because you're just adding to this dog pile about her attention is unwarranted, she's overhyped, and now she's being, you know, rewarded for her college play by being named to a team that's comprised of WNBA players, of which she hasn't proven herself. And like, she's just going to get more static for that if she was on the team. And maybe, you know, maybe they did her a favor. I don't know.
There was, maybe I fell for a fake NBA Sentinel, but I read somewhere that a representative said that she probably wouldn't get playing time with this lineup, and they didn't want such a popular player to have to deal with answering those questions of like, how come you're not playing? These are easy games and all these veterans are getting minutes over you. They didn't want that drama to distract from the thing. I'm like, so a player's too popular? Like, and this gets into the mild sexism kind of debate that I think it's like, well, this is like a wounded brand and you need this thing to push your brand. I kind of agree with it. Like, is a team representing a country a diplomatic act? Shout out to Cameron. Or is it a display of power? Or is it something fans want? Right? And if fans do want it, then does the WNBA or women's basketball need to cater to those fans in order to exist with some sort of collateral? Don't they have the collateral baked in already? Do we need to please the masses?
It feels to me as if the WNBA was just like, hey, we're keeping this like merit-based, and we're just going to opt out. But I do believe that they thought about those other issues for sure.
Right, like if we respond to the fans,
said,
we look weak.
If she's not playing, right, we look weak. We look like we are giving preferential treatment to Caitlin Clark, who is. I think if Caitlin Clark had came in and was blowing shit out of the water, she would have been on it.
Yeah, but she wouldn't be as popular, right? Like, this is a perfect storm. She is the ideal version of Caitlin Clark right now because she was fallible on the court. So you had people being like, she's a fraud. You know, like these other players, I'm the gatekeeper. These players are bigger, faster, and more skilled than this hotshot rookie you just started following. And I'm like, this is what you want. If she had come through bombing and not turning the ball over, there wouldn't be this tension.
I agree. Yeah, and that's part of why she's the take machine. Right. Had maybe her best game of her career.
8 turnovers.
Last night. I mean, that's bad, but I'm saying.
Amazing.
Made 7 threes, scored 30
Won the
on
game.
15 shots, right. Got the W, 8 boards, 6 assists, 4 steals. And turnovers are bad, but yeah.
She's a great player. I think it's official. She's awesome. Is she better than Sabrina Ionescu? I don't know. Pick your poison. but she's
Hard to say.
in that discussion.
Yeah. I mean, but you actually nailed it though. It's like she is at the exact right level of like promising, but still very flawed, and yet both sides have tons of upside for their opinion. Mm-hmm. She still might be a bust. Yeah. She still might be a goat. But people can just argue this for a while. Anyway, shout out to her for keeping the plus 500 aura going here.
It's exciting, man. It's like when the final started, to everyone's like sigh, except for Boston and Dallas fans. Everyone's like, oh, the Lakers are trying to steal the thunder of the finals. I'm like, no, it's Caitlin Clark. We care about Caitlin Clark. Like our attention has like shifted to her even more so than your boy Bobby Hurley.
I can't remember if I said this last week, but if I did, fuck it. I was like, you know what? We had that long break, that 5 days, 6 days, whatever it was, between the end of the conference finals and the beginning of the finals. And it felt like they could have just wrapped it up. Hey, you know what? We're not going to do the finals, actually. Yeah, I don't know. We're just going to move on to draft and free agency. And everyone would be like, okay, that's cool. Kind of felt like that.
Yeah.
I think that break did hurt the momentum of it because the weather got good. Spring and summer was here. The first game was on a Thursday night which is like a going out night.
It was late on the West Coast. It was like, I believe it was an 8:30 tip off on the East Coast. Like, I'm Del Boca Vista.
You're saying it was early on the West Coast.
Oh, my bad. Yes, it was early on the West. Too late here. My bad. Yes. And yeah, Boston and Dallas. Like, I love the NBA, but this is for heads only.
Oh, for sure. As I said, there's no MVP. There's no
LeBron.
There's no legacy.
There's no Jokic. None of these.
There's no Curry.
Yeah. I was watching. Someone posted a NBA on NBC preview where Bob Costas talks about Jordan's legacy entering this specific game with like beautiful music and cinematography. And I'm like, what a stark contrast it is to Barkley being like, I hate both these teams. You know who's a sham? All these players. They wouldn't have beat me. And I'm like, oh, this is a whole... And it's not his fault. It's the tone in which we talk about everything with... everyone can be a celebrity if they can stick to their guns and be right enough. And I don't know. I was saying, like, in order to boost Major League Baseball, the WNBA, or even the NBA, they should just hire a bunch of, like, Wyden and Kennedy-ass writers, a few comedians, and make these, like, lush, overarching, panoramic vignettes. And then we would get, like, some oomph. Because going into this, like, you got Tatum, you got superstars, potentially. All we have to do is talk about them as superstars, but we're not doing that.
I fully agree. And I think we mentioned this, that the article that kind of talks about the ESPN model versus the ABC model, or excuse me, the NBC model, and how it's an ad for ESPN and ESPN personalities versus an ad for the product. Right. And I thought the halftime show yesterday was just like, here's Stephen A. Smith barking for 2 minutes. Exactly. It's like, that guy doesn't know anything about basketball. He is a carnival barker. He is a self-promoter. He's a genius at what he does. But he's not someone you want basketball insight from. He might be good on a talk show with a rant about a basketball player or a team as like a comedic interlude. But here's what we just saw. Let's go to Stephen A. Smith. Dude, come on, man.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I just think the broadcast needs writers to be like, hammer these ideas home. Like, make people involved. Start months ago and build up to these finals. Because I don't know what Stephen A. Smith was talking about. And he's just like, right, he just wants the economy of controversy and grievance, which is great. But I think there's space for us to fall in love with a finals as dull as Boston, Dallas. And
I agree. Stephen A. Smith his economy is Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
His economy is not, we need to inspire a sense of worthiness in this product or awe at its athletes. It's still Stephen A. Smith. And if that means that I've said, like, Kyrie Irving didn't show up today and he's a bitch, that serves the Stephen A. Smith agenda.
Yeah. Tune in on Monday for First Take when I go really in on Kyrie Irving. It's like,
You didn't want to go to the Knicks.
yeah. I mean, fair enough. Like, it is not his fault. Sort of like it's not the Celtics' fault. It is whoever is shaping this thing. Maybe this is exactly what they want, but the aura has been probably not perfect for this.
What would you say? Minus what?
George Gervin, Iceman aura. I mean, he had huge aura, but I'm talking negative Celsius. No, I mean, there's interest. People hate the Celtics enough to watch, but like, there's confusion with Kyrie. Is he a good person or bad person? There's confusion with Tatum. Is he awesome or is he just a guy? Like, this is not good for the league. That's fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
no, I'm not even trying to harsh the Mavs or the Celtics or say that this isn't meaningful. Of course, sure, it's meaningful enough.
Yeah.
It's an NBA championship. Like, it's going in the books, whatever happens. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have the same glitter as some of the ones we've seen in the past. Obviously, that's true. But I don't think the Lakers news was time to diminish the finals, and nor was it even something that the Lakers should be concerned about. But people are like, the Lakers trying to steal the thunder. It's like, well, they're just trying to find a coach, man. So it looked like JJ Redick, a fellow podcaster, was going to be named the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, which I support, and I think that most or all teams should be coached by podcasters. The guys from Throwing Fits, I think, would be excellent in some positions.
Red
I think.
Scare to the Houston Rockets. Let's go.
Dasha is coaching the Orlando Magic.
The Turtle Bay Turtles. Yeah. The JJ Redick hire was leaked by Shams, and he was the only one who had it. But we had been kind of prepping for this. It had been no secret that they were talking to him, and it seemed like the logical hire because he had just elevated his brand so quickly at ESPN. He ends up making news as the next hire, and immediately the next day it turns out then the Lakers were looking at Bobby Hurley from UConn as their primary target, which was confusing.
Danny Hurley.
Oh,
I must
my
correct
bad,
you,
my bad.
Andrew, because we're correcting each other now on this
Right,
show.
right. You should have let me fly with it because let the pod cops at me. But God, I thought about it too. Danny Hurley's the guy. Did he go through his truck windshield, or was that a third Hurley? You remember that?
That was Bobby, right?
Was that Bobby? Right when he was kind of a decent pro.
So Bobby was the one who was a star at Duke, who then
Leitner's guy.
went and was drafted as a lottery pick by the Sacramento Kings, had a signature shoe. You can look them up, the Hurleys. They're out there. And then got in a car accident and was never the same. And then he might be coaching at like St. Anthony's or something.
He was kind of
Like back in Jersey, where they're from.
he was kind of good as a pro, right?
I mean, he didn't play very much.
Oh, I thought he was kind of decent.
He might have ended up being good,
Yeah.
but I mean, he only had a 4-year career because of his injury.
Yeah. Danny Hurley has won back-to-back championships, I think, with UConn, and it's kind of like the lazy hire, right? Because he is having the most success at the level right below the NBA, and he's kind of like a hard-nosed, X's and O's, tough white guy coach, conservative seeming, right? So it seems like there would be little controversy with hiring him, whereas Redick has his sleeve, has a podcast stain on his resume, and is kind of like hated already.
He has the Paul Pierce poop smear stain of being a podcaster on the pants of his resume.
Right. I mean, I kind of was annoyed at that Redick hire because I don't know if we talked about this on the pod or off the pod, but like his analysis, there's no doubt he's a great basketball mind. But is he greater than like Jay Crossover, Jamal Crawford, who like has been kind of reduced on air to a hype man, being like, "Yup, I love it," like pushing the energy of broadcasts as opposed to slowing the game down and talking about minutia. And Redick is given this lane, and he's known as, I believe, the cerebral analyst who can talk about the ins and outs because he's an ex-pro and he played at Duke, and of course he's smart. Look, he's white and has a clean cut. I don't see his sleeve anywhere, right? And I thought he was an odd hire, but these are all political actions, right? There's no great coach out there that we know about. So he might be the one, Hurley might be the one, Jay Crossover might be the one. But you have to take a chance because Spo is not available.
Yeah, I think there's every indication Redick is a smart dude who understands basketball. I don't know if he's abnormally cerebral. I don't know if he's a good coach.
He has not shown us yet, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, even with Steve Nash, there was more evidence that you could say from his playing career, and he'd even coached in Golden State a bit before he was hired by the Nets. But you could say, okay, he was a point guard. We understand that he was a basketball genius. He played under Mike D'Antoni, who reinvented offense.
He was an MVP.
He's been in Golden State. There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, like the Redick, I saw when he got hired, people were trying to claim he was one of the greatest NCAA players of all time, and that's why this makes sense. I'm like, he wasn't even the 10 best Duke players of all time, but he fits that role. Casting, we always talk about casting, right? And Hurley also fits. I don't know. I think it's our duty to be good people and root against the Lakers. So like, let the chaos begin.
I mean, I think they would be crazy to hire Redick instead of Hurley if Hurley was available, solely because Redick has never been a coach.
Okay, but I just want to push back. The style of coaching Hurley is involved with, which is hard-nosed, discipline, bring it all in. But he's a bulldog. Do you think that translates to like adults? And
I mean, isn't that Thibs?
There's many examples where it has worked. Brad Stevens, for example, like it. But Hurley's like Scott Skiles. He's not like Tibbs. What did he get done? Right? Like, are Lakers fans happy with a second round exit twice in a row? Like, that's a failure, right? He gets fired for that. If you have LeBron and AD.
I mean, I'm with you on Hurley's coaching style as being hyper aggro and yelling at people, but I'm not sure he's super intense.
Yeah, famously intense.
But I also think that intensity it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
sure.
And I think a lot of these coaches are super intense, but maybe he would chill out in the pros a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, is he just using this for a bigger contract from UConn?
I would, but like he has any job he wants if he gets fired for only making the second round every year. Like, he has every job he wants in college, right? But maybe he likes UConn. Yeah, maybe he wants to stay there. That's one of the great programs. But maybe he goes to Duke, like every other Hurley in my mind.
I mean, that could work too. I just don't see him taking the Lakers job.
No?
It seems, I mean, unless they're just willing to pay him like an insane amount of money. I just feel like his success, his security, whether it's at UConn or if he goes somewhere else, like, pros just don't have that, especially the Lakers job.
You know, it's also ambitious and strategic.
Perfect podcast.
You got it, man. No need for the Robin assist here.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.